Formula One's top teams all have their driver lineups theoretically locked down for 2023, except as far as the silly season is concerned, no contract is watertight. The top half of the grid is mostly under contract, but if you want to know how much that actually means, the admission from McLaren that Daniel Ricciardo's deal could be ended before 2023 is a perfect example. Factor in the speculation over whether Lewis Hamilton will want to continue at Mercedes, a couple of other world champions who are out of contract after 2022, and a protege with a stunning CV still waiting for his F1 breakthrough, and there's plenty to be sorted out before the 2023 grid can be finalised. Red Bull signing Sergio Perez to a new 2-year contract leaves McLaren as the top team with a significant element of uncertainty over its driver pairing, and therefore makes McLaren key to the driver market. McLaren Racing CEO Zak Brown let slip at the Indianapolis 500 that it's not guaranteed Daniel Ricciardo will race for the team in 2023 because there's a break clause in his contract that can be deployed. But the final part of Brown's answer was slightly odd. We'll just see how things develop, what he wants to do. It's implied Ricciardo has to decide, and we understand this is because it's not McLaren that can choose to end the deal early, it's Ricciardo with an option of triggering a break clause. It therefore becomes pertinent to ask if Ricciardo wants to keep going if results stay the way they are. Ricciardo is a deeply competitive character whose struggles at McLaren have been a huge surprise to himself as much as anybody else. He's not shirking tough questions about his form, his contract, and the urgency to turn it around. There is an obvious desire for Ricciardo to remain resilient in this situation, and it would be unfair to suggest he's thrown in the towel. All credit to him for that, but it doesn't change the fact he doesn't have many answers at the moment. And when his best efforts and the team's are yielding no real results, it's clearly becoming harder. Ricciardo keeps digging deep with no real reward. It's worth noting that so far Ricciardo's had nothing bad to say about how McLaren has treated him or the effort it's putting in to help him turn things around. There's not yet any indication McLaren is plotting a soft exit for Ricciardo, like paying him off or guiding him towards a drive elsewhere. But either McLaren will decide to persevere to the very end, or it will conclude that this just isn't working out and that it's in its best interests if Ricciardo leaves. McLaren could then try to encourage Ricciardo to do that. Both Ricciardo and McLaren have stated several times all their energy is in making this work. If they can, there's no reason to question whether Ricciardo stays, but if they can't, the less likely it is that he'll continue. And if Ricciardo decides it's best to leave, McLaren will then be the hottest ticket in town. We know a lot of fans have identified Pierre Gasly as a driver they think would be a worthy replacement for Ricciardo. As Red Bull is now totally off limits, Gasly would surely be interested in McLaren, given it's one of the few teams that would represent a definite step up from AlphaTauri rather than a sideways move. Gasly has a similar driving style to Ricciardo when attacking corner entries, and that has been Ricciardo's weakness at McLaren. So that may be a red flag for McLaren in terms of seeing Gasly as a real option. But Gasly's management should be knocking down doors at Woking, otherwise they won't be doing their jobs. Perez's new contract has been coming for a while, but it confirms the long-held view that Red Bull simply wasn't convinced Gasly was the best short, medium or long-term option for the senior team. And that means he's definitely free to decide what he does next. As Red Bull won't promote him for 2023, the final year of his current contract, Gasly is believed to be clear to talk to other teams. He has the option of staying with AlphaTauri, somewhere that brings the best out of him and that he can be a team leader. And that's a project Gasly has always said the right things about in terms of its potential to become a better team in its own right. But can that really happen? Gasly was angry at the team for blowing such a good chance in Monaco in a season that's been below expectations. And he said it was just the latest error that frustrated him, suggesting he's running out of patience. Especially as AlphaTauri also underachieved in 2021 given the outright pace of its car and the fact that Gasly had his best personal season. The question is how high up the list Gasly is for a team like McLaren. He is a race winner and has starred in the midfield with AlphaTauri, but he was also a flop at Red Bull in the first half of 2019, and the team gave the impression he had the wrong attitude at times. That reputation will have stuck in some parts of the paddock, despite some excellent reputation rebuilding since then. Sebastian Vettel's 2022 season started poorly, missing the first 2 races thanks to COVID-19, then enduring a crash-strewn weekend in Australia on his return. But since then, things have picked up. In an Aston Martin that was uncompetitive in the first few races, Vettel has now finished 8th at Imola and 10th in Monaco. He also would have scored points in Miami, but for a late collision with Mick Schumacher. The question now is, does Vettel want to continue in F1, and does Aston Martin believe he's the best available driver? Earlier this year, Vettel suggested that his decision on whether to stay on at Aston Martin could depend on the progress it makes. He has consistently said he doesn't want to stay in F1 to make up the numbers and is eager to fight at the front. But he's also aware that the decisions Aston Martin's making now will dictate its future success. Aston Martin introduced a massive aerodynamic upgrade in Spain, a package that has only just started to show its potential. That means the performance Aston Martin unlocks in the coming races could be decisive in whether Vettel wants to continue with the team and perhaps in F1 at all. As Aston Martin team principal Mike Crack has said, it's up to them to deliver the tools needed for Vettel to perform. But one thing does seem for certain: Vettel's choosing between an extension at Aston Martin or walking away from F1 altogether. Fernando Alonso turns 41 in July and his place at Alpine has yet to be finalised for 2023, but he's shown no signs of slowing down. Alonso is determined to race in F1 for another 2 or 3 years, and given the driver market landscape, remaining at Alpine appears to be by far his best option. As Alpine has Esteban Ocon signed up until the end of 2024, Alonso's fate is intertwined with that of Oscar Piastri. But as Alonso has argued, it's about performance rather than age, and despite results this season not being as good as hoped, Alonso's been driving very well. His return of 10 points to Ocon's 30 belies the fact that he's been consistently strong. Alonso had retirements in Saudi Arabia caused by a broken water pump and Imola, with sidepod and floor damage caused when Mick Schumacher spun and hit him. Alonso also had a hydraulic leak while on a lap that looks set to earn him a second row grid position in Australia, 2 time penalties that cost him points in Miami, and then traffic in Q1 that put him well down the grid in Spain even before a power unit change. So Alonso is doing the job on track, and the only real question mark is whether Alpine decides it needs to give Piastri his F1 break in its own team. But most likely, Alonso will stay on for 2023. The big question will be the form his deal takes in terms of both its value and how long it is, and then of course it's a matter of Piastri being placed elsewhere. Reigning Formula 2 champion Piastri missed out on an F1 drive for 2022, and while that was a big shame, it is the sort of thing that can happen. If he were to remain off the grid for a second season, that would be a massive injustice, given the junior career he's put together. If Alonso sticks around, then Piastri's obvious route into F1 via Alpine remains closed off. But he would surely be close to the top of any team's shopping list if a vacancy appears elsewhere on the 2023 grid. It would be in Alpine's interest for its hot property to find a drive for next year rather than be stuck on the sidelines again, so there's a high chance a temporary move elsewhere could come with the Renault-owned team's blessing. We've already heard rumours of serious interest from Williams, which would probably be a move Alpine would support for 2 reasons. First, it would be unlikely to place Piastri in direct competition with the parent team, and second, Williams has already shown a willingness to take a driver on loan from somewhere else, as that's how it got Alex Albon in its car this year from Red Bull. Where things could get complicated is if a team offers Piastri a really promising opportunity, but only on the condition that he's fully released by Alpine. As we've touched on in previous videos about the driver market, plenty of silly seasons have been shaken up by unexpected bombshell announcements. The question is, where could one of those shock moves come from for next year? If we knew the answer, then it wouldn't be much of a bombshell when it happened, but perhaps Lewis Hamilton is the best opportunity. He's contracted to Mercedes until the end of 2023, but it wasn't that long ago there were rumblings about him considering his future in the wake of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix fiasco. Mercedes' stuttering start to the new technical regulations this year means Hamilton will have to stick around for the final year of his contract if he wants another shot at an 8th world title. But if he doesn't see enough signs of improvement over the rest of this season to make him believe he'll have a title contending car in 2023, could he walk away? Far stranger things have happened in Formula 1, and an unexpected vacancy at Mercedes would send shockwaves through the F1 driver market. Based on current form, you'd have to assume that anyone driving anything other than a Red Bull or a Ferrari would be highly motivated to find a way into that Mercedes seat if it became available. Even without such a dramatic twist though, there's plenty of driver market intrigue to come, probably more than many expected at a time of relative contractual stability. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments who you would like to see go where and what you think the big moves will be.